Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more MBTI. Today we're going to be checking out the mind of Carl Benjamin, better known as Sargon of Akkad, from his appearance on the Heretics. Before we do, let's talk about the system, because you have not seen MBTI done quite the way that I do it. We have 5 choices, and those choices help us to determine the types, right? What we are doing here is trying to find indicators of the way we think and the way we deliver information so that we can get a grip on ourselves, so that we can find things in ourselves that we wish to change or strengthen. The way that we do that is through these 5 choices. You are either focused on things or ideas. It is either the here and now, the things you can touch going into the past, or it is the ideas and the concepts and foreseeing into the future. You either do that by gathering all the new ideas or all the new things, or you sort them. You take them and find the best one out of all of them. You either do that for yourself or the tribe. That does not mean you're selfish if you're self-centered. It means that you use the thing before you pass it on. Whereas someone who is tribe focused is going to give it to the tribe immediately, and then they're going to try and take their enjoyment from it. You are either rigid or you're flexible in how you go about that. It's either my way or the highway, or let's see if we can accommodate many people. And you're either direct or informative. You either give the whole story and stop, or you give the whole story 3 times and chase a couple rabbit holes along the way. All of these things add up into the typology that you see here in this grid, and we will talk about that more as we go along. But for now, let's dive into this interview. We are a few minutes ahead so that Carl can get comfortable with the interchange. It doesn't seem to be overly antagonistic, so it should be a free exchange of information. We are looking first and foremost to see if it's things or ideas, because that sets the tone for everything. And is it new ones or is it old ones? Is it the one idea or is it many ideas? Is it the one thing or many things? Let's dive in and see what the mind of Carl Benjamin has for us today.
Yeah, it's so arbitrary and changeable as well. I mean, I've talked about it before, so apologies to those listening, but I'm a linguist as well. I speak a few languages, so I'm fascinated by like how those words became insulting. So now we have identity words. Those are the ones. So N word, there's a K word and a Y word for Jews. There's F word for gay people. Everyone's now thinking those horrible words you mustn't say. 20 years ago, it was bodily functions and bodily aspects.
You should be able to say anything.
Fuck, shit, ass. I can say.
If you get mad because someone says a word, that is a you problem, not a them problem. They have their own problem, but you getting mad is your problem.
Those words now. I can't say the C word. I could, but YouTube might punish me because that delves into the identity terrain as well as the...
But then 300 years before that, it was profanity, as in sacred words.
Religious
words, words about God, the devil, and no one thinks twice about any of those things. But that's where the concept of profanity comes from.
What will be next? So we've gone from religion to body to identity.
I don't know what comes next.
John Matt Water once said to me, just as a random thing, it could.
Okay, so we've gotten 2 answers from Carl so far, and they've both been rather direct. Neither one of them have been like something you could really type off of. There is somewhat of a self-focus, right? Because he said I twice, but it's questions for him about his opinion. So.
It could be climate, something to do with the climate. So you'd call someone a windmill or something, or like an oil stain.
Possibly. I think it's going to be more about the comfort of the person's mind and mental state.
Okay, so now that's an idea, right? That's possibly a best idea, and it seems to be outward focused. Right? It's going to be about the state of someone's mind.
So you already see the R word being stigmatized.
About assault.
No, different R word.
And I knew which one he was talking about.
People's mental capacity.
Okay, yes.
I don't know.
Slow in French.
Yes, slow in French, exactly.
Or late.
That's a good way to put that.
That's become a stigmatized word, because I think it really all comes down to the sense of disquietude that a person feels in their own mind.
Okay, so that's an experience about an idea.
It's about their own sense of mental balance, and I think that's what is ultimately trying to be. I think that
Carl's flipping off the camera.
They're trying to protect it, but of course there are consequences to doing it.
Okay, so we do have a good bit of tribe focus, right? There's a lot of they, there's a lot of we, there's a lot of multiple people, right? And Carl's not one of those people who refers to himself as they. So he is at least somewhat tribe focused. He is at least somewhat ideas focused, right? We're getting more ideas than we're getting things so far. This is very early on. This is a very quick assumption, but that is the leaning so far. He also seems to be fairly direct. We're not getting a whole lot of information.
As well.
Going back to trial by media, because I do want to make this point. I understand what you're saying, that of course there are going to be bad actors involved in the media, but without them, I don't think they would have caught Epstein. I don't think we'd know about Savile. So I think we do need that media.
They protected them.
And that's some tribe pushback, right?
Some did.
Yeah.
And the others
Most.
uncovered them. The police didn't do much, though.
The police didn't do anything. I actually think it might be a more case of social media that is the reason that Savile and Epstein are known for what they are. Because there was the leak from an American journalist who, between...
Okay, now this is talking about physical things, right? They're things that have happened.
segments on her show, was complaining that she'd compiled a giant dossier on Epstein and it was just shut down by the network. And this she found very frustrating, understandably so, because he's literally a child trafficker. And of course, with the Savile stuff, the BBC protected him for decades. And it was well known, apparently, at the BBC. I mean, I never worked at the BBC, so I didn't know anything about it, because all I got was the output from the BBC, which, of course, didn't come out and say, hey, by the way, one of our most famous presenters is a pedo. Yeah. Actually, weirdly, they didn't do that segment on the BBC. So I don't know. I mean, the thing...
Okay, so again, we're getting the outward focus, right? The BBC is an outward focus. Of course, that's the topic of conversation, but it didn't necessarily have to be. It seems to be an outward focus, but the questions are outwardly focused, so that's a little bit harder to determine. Again, this time we seem to be dealing more with actual things that have actually happened, facts, right? They covered up for this actual thing. They were running interference for the thing. That's an idea, but it's more of a thing. This thing actually happened. They actually covered it up. It's talking about the actual sensations and the actual experience, so that leans more towards things than ideas. Andy brought in a couple of them.
The thing is with the media, it begins with a fairly noble premise, right? Which is, okay, so the fourth estate is going to hold the powers that be to account.
Okay, so that's a one idea. The state will hold the powers of the state to account.
So the fourth estate is going to hold the powers that be to account.
Okay, that's a one idea, right? That's not a couple of ideas. That is a idea, and it's supposed to be an experiential idea.
Which sounds like a fantastic idea. You know, I agree. Politicians, people like the governor of the Bank of England, or whoever.
Politicians, people, the governor. That's examples of people, and that's going to be people as things as opposed to people as ideas.
It is, any person who has a very important position that they're difficult to remove from, there should be public accountability, and the media there
should be public accountability as, again, an idea, right? That's a one idea.
Therefore should serve the public interest. But I don't think
accountability and interest are really the same box.
I think anyone can reasonably say the media is actually serving the public interest at this point. It seems that the media, frankly...
That's taking into account the tribe, right? But it's also flexing around the ideas or the thoughts of the tribe and accepting with flexibility, right? That's not a my way or the highway. That is let's understand why they think this way.
He has been captured by probably being bought off, but also through ideology, to be the defenders of the status quo at the moment. And so anyone who comes up who's
being the defenders of the status quo is an idea, right? That's a one idea.
Seems to be challenging the status quo, is rendered as some sort of enemy of the state. And so the media isn't really acting in the best interest of the general public, but they are acting in the best interest of, I guess, what you could term the managerial elite.
Okay, so far what seems to be happening is he has the one idea and he's bringing the multitude of things to support the one idea. It could be the other way around, but it seems like it's more about here's the supporting evidence for the idea, as opposed to here's the evidence, here's the idea. So that's the way it seems to be going, is more ideas, more old, right, sorted ideas, more tribe focused, right. There's a good bit of tribe feedback and pushback happening. He seems to be rather direct. He's not chasing rabbit holes. He's not over explaining at all. And he seems to be a little bit movement. He's not firm in this is the right way. He's explaining why it is and taking into consideration the reasoning and the rationale of the tribe. So all of those like add in, and it just occurs to me that I've got the wrong thing here, right? All right, now let's get back to Carl.
That think that actually everything should be controlled by some people remotely who know how things should be, which is pretty awful, I think.
One thing.
That's a one idea, right? That's pretty awful. If these people do this thing, that's pretty awful, right? The difference between the one idea and many ideas, right, is you're holding open for many ideas. If he's seeing this, then he's going to hold open to maybe there's another idea and another idea in addition to the one idea. We keep getting these individual boxes of direction, right? Looking forward into the future, it seems like this is the best path, is in I, which is in intuition, but it's in the internal intuition, right? It's centered, focused on you, and that's sorting.
You said is that the media is very left wing. I'm hearing people listening saying, "Oh, hang on, Murdoch owns so much of it," and he. I know you said Daily Mail is a bit schizophrenic, but it's not a left wing.
No, it's not. It's not a left wing institution itself, but the Daily Mail is one paper.
The Sun, Fox News.
That's three.
So relatively, it's
most are left. And to deny that is to deny fact. Most are left.
So the more,
far more. There's far more on the left. And it's normal. You know, it's just the way the media has been for a long time. It's hard to think of any.
That's a box.
Impactful. I mean, the BBC recently had to do a reorganization within their own ranks because they.
And there's an example in support of the idea.
They admitted their own liberal bias.
And again, it's outwardly focused. He could be talking about why he feels this way, and that would be an inward focus. Instead, he is focusing on the outward evidence.
And it was like, okay, why would they have to do that? The BBC meant to be the bastion of neutrality in the country. It's like, yeah, actually, we're really liberal, and we need to change that. And if we don't change that, we're going to continue to alienate ourselves from the British public, who actually aren't particularly liberal.
Okay, so now there's some flex, right? That this is considering the feelings of the people, right? That's flexibility, as opposed to this is the morally right thing to do, stand on it.
We're actually really quite far right in a lot of ways. But those people don't get to have any representation. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, if you look at BBC Question Time, like, it's always the same. It's 3 liberals and 1 milquetoast conservative.
And Jimmy Carr.
And well, occasionally Jimmy Carr. Yeah, but whenever, you know, it's a political, you know, slate, it's always like a Guardian journalist, the Green Party member, and then someone who writes for the Telegraph. And it's like,
so that was 3 examples of ideas as things.
The Telegraph, that's the right now, is it? You know, that's the entire representation right-wing thought in Britain gets. And it's just very frustrating.
I'm getting a real good feeling of ideas from Carl, right? This seems to be mostly focused on the ideas, with the things being brought up in support. We're getting a broad range of things in support, so that helps with the narrowing of ideas, because it's one or the other, right? So what we're looking at seems to be, so far, let's go ahead and do the transition. He seems to be ideas focused. That's going to put us on the right half of the screen. He seems to be old. That's going to put us on the far right. He seems to be tribe. That's going to put us in the bottom 2 rows. He seems to be flexible. That's going to put us in the very bottom row. So we're looking at an ENFJ. So let me go ahead and pull that up right quick. And we will talk about the next one. Now, the third slot going down here is determined by the direct and informative. If you are direct, that means that you are holding the energy for yourself, and that's an E, or no, that's an I. And if you are informative, you are giving the energy away, and that means that you're an E. Well, in the third slot, the I is going to be an alternate. He seems to be rather direct. He is not chasing rabbit holes. He's giving examples, but they are pertinent and they are clipped. They are fairly close. So we're going to look at an alternate ENFJ. And what does that mean? That means that you're going to understand, almost without thinking about it, what the ethics of the situation is and how people feel about things. We've seen several examples already of him taking in the people's feelings without even really thinking about it, understanding what these people are going to feel about this situation without even really having to deal with it at all. Now, the NI is choosing the best possibility. He's going to feel responsible for that. The crown spot is your parent slot. It is where you feel responsibility for doing things. So he's going to feel responsible for making sure that people see the best possibility, right? He's going to consider all of these feelings and say, okay, here's the best path forward. He's going to do that through using his logic, and he's going to get defensive over his logic because the third eye spot is where you see forward. It's where you actually visualize and actually manifest things. But you get defensive if people question you on it. And for him, that's going to be his own logic. He feels that his logic is good. It might be, it might not be. But if you question it, he's going to get defensive over the logic. No. Here's the examples because I'm right about this. He's going to miscommunicate and misunderstand and be misunderstood in the third eye or in the throat area. That's going to be SE, the actual execution of the plan, the actual sensations coming from it, the actual things and evidence. It's not that he's not concerned about it. It's not that he doesn't get things done. It's just that it's a lower priority. And you don't really spend as much energy in these two areas, right? You don't receive as much energy. The top gives you a lot of really good information, and the bottom gives you a lot of really bad information. They meet in the middle, but they're watered down heavily by the time they get there. And you don't really understand this. So you just kind of coast on it. You don't really invest heavily in it. You have the examples, but you're not pulling out specific examples of reporters. In the one instance, it's the job of working at this place makes you a person as an idea, right? Or an idea as a person, as opposed to naming an individual. And so he's going to have a tendency to miss the evidence. He's going to have a tendency to not, he's going to finish the thing, but it's going to take a long time to do. What he really wants to do, the thing that is really the desire of your heart, is what you really want to do it. For him, that is to have morals, right? To have impeccable morals. He sees what the ethics are, and your decision once you see the ethics is whether or not you take those in. Right? If he can take those in and stand on them, he's going to be golden. Carl does that. Carl has spent the time and taken the time to understand the ethics, and now he stands in his morals. So we see that. The solar plexus is what feeds that. And in order to feed this FI, you're going to need more ideas. You think you have the best idea off the top. You have to learn to take in more ideas because there might be a better one. Yours might be great, but there might be one that's just a little bit better. And so it is always worthy to consider the other ideas. That does not mean to adopt them, but to consider them. The sacral is what you're going to intentionally choose the wrong thing. Nobody ever says, hey, I'm going to choose the wrong thing, but people do it all the time. That's because they misunderstand, right? This information that comes up from the bottom is the wrong information. You see it in the wrong light. It does the wrong thing, unless you're intentional about it. For him, that's going to be the TE, what other people think. He knows what they feel. He gets that like with no problem, as easy as breathing. But what they actually think about it is an assumption that he makes because he knows how they feel. Now, the feelings and the thoughts may line up and they may not, but when they don't, it's going to bite you in the butt. You get 75% reception of negative energy here. You're going to assume they have the worst thoughts. That's not necessarily the case. You have to learn to dig down one more step. We're going to get into the base. And the base is what you get wrong and you don't mean to. That is the actual evidence, right? The actual sensory to you. That is, it has been experienced and now you are sorting it into best and worst. And you're going to have a tendency to sort them wrong. That doesn't mean that you do it intentionally. You're probably going to misremember some of the experience. You're going to misremember some of the things. You're going to have trouble being organized, keeping notes. Your file cabinet probably looks a little bit weird. Your desk is probably a little unorganized. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Too much organization is a problem, just as much as not enough. But you're going to have a tendency to miss appointments. You're going to have a tendency to oversleep. You're going to have a tendency to get into addictive things. That's not everybody, but it's most people who have this particular stack. If you identify with any of this and you're like, you know what, maybe this is me, and you want to see, I have a whole video devoted just to the ENFJ and the ENFJ alternate. It will be linked down below, and you can look and see if these things identify with you. And if you would like to try and get a handle on your organization and try and figure out why you're seeing what people are thinking wrong. If you're too tied up in the feelings, which can be a problem. If you're choosing the path forward, but it's wrong. Check out the Infinite Integrations playlist where we learn how to spend some time and to strengthen these things with a framework so that we can improve in ourselves the things that we want to improve in ourselves. This is not a medical diagnosis. This is not infallible the only way, right? This is a short clip of an interview about topics. So we're making assumptions. We're just looking for indicators so that you can identify something that Carl does that maybe you do too. Maybe he has a turn of phrase and you're like, oh, I say that a lot. Maybe I can look at this and figure something out about me. That's the point of the system. It's not to cast any judgment on any of the subjects ever at any point. Now we're going to look for confirmations. We're going to go watch a few more minutes just to get a good feel to see if this is about right. Again, this is not the end-all be-all. This is not a one-on-one conversation, which is the best way to do this. The best way is for yourself, and the second best way is with somebody who understands the system and you can actually figure it out, because you're going to lie to you more than likely. We're going to be looking for some feelings confirmation, if he is gathering the feelings without even thinking about it, if he is choosing the best path forward, if he is defensive over his logic, if he is missing some of the details in the evidence. Is he missing the organization? Is he missing the sensory experience for himself? Is he misunderstanding what other people think? These are the confirmations, and we're just going to see if there's some as we go along. Let's see.
Really wound up, especially, I talked about cancellations, and there's things I can't yet talk about. There's a few things have happened recently.
Yeah.
And you end up talking to people who I do think are well-meaning, a lot of these people, but they live in a world of artists and art curators and book publishers, and like this, it is so far removed from society. So when you say, the average person is nothing like these people.
Yeah.
The things I hear them say behind closed doors about we should push this book because I know that with the marketing team have said the public don't want it, but we should push it anyway because I believe in this ideological thing about this particular trans black person who's a whatever.
Yeah.
And you want to throttle these people because you want to say, like, I know you mean well, because I think it comes from a well-meaning thing, but I want to say, look, hang on, do you realize that's what the world thinks of you? They see you as going, we know what's right for you.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, they never spend any time interrogating why they think the things that are good, right? Why do you believe that pushing this book is actually a good thing? And they'll give you a very shallow answer, something along the lines of representation. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk.
Now that could be taken as misunderstanding other people's thoughts, right? He understands their feelings.
Talk about representation. Where exactly should the average British person feel represented in, say, the BBC?
Well, I wasn't allowed on. I don't know if you know my backstory.
don't know.
So I used to make sort of pseudo Louis Theroux kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and then got told by every production company in the UK, about 50 of them I went to, every single one said, we can't have you on screen anymore. So we'll take your ideas.
Why not?
I think you know.
I think I do know. Yeah.
Yeah. They said, we've take your ideas, but we want a minority on screen to do it. And I was like, what? So it will look like they did the journalism. And I learned 5 languages to be able to go around the world and do it. And I was like, and they were like, yeah, but we'll get a translator. So I was like, right. So, anyway, that's why that was BBC Channel 4.
Yeah.
And so I know about that. Bloody hell.
Doesn't seem very just, does it?
No. And it you know, there was that. Have you seen that? I guess it was Colin.
Just could be the box, right? It could be the box that he feels responsible for. Now, that is, in part, me reaching for an example, because I need confirmation for me, right? So I got to keep that in mind too. My own confirmation bias is part of this, but it seems like he is pushing that into a justice box, and that he feels responsible for that.
Right, I think the swipe right Twitter, and Elon Musk recently retweeted it of like, here's me on the center left, and here's the far left person, you know, my comrade or whatever, and here's the right, and then gradually that person on the far left shouting, you know, you're a bigot, and then here's me moving to the right, and I feel that, I felt that happen, I felt that movement of like, oh, I'm not allowed in this tribe anymore.
That happened to me too.
Yeah, well, so what happened to you?
Well, just the same thing. I took objection to the way that the left... I always thought of myself as being left-wing, but I didn't know much about left-wing philosophy at the time, and the more I looked into it, the more I realised, oh, I'm not left-wing, and actually these people are crazy, and the world they're trying to bring into existence is probably going to be terrible, and so I think they should be stopped.
It has some nice ideas in the left, sort of share the wealth.
Wealth is always shared. Like, that's not their idea. Like kings used to literally give out money after looting a city to their nobles to keep the nobles happy. Like,
but did the nobles then give it to the peasants?
They've got no choice. They've got to pay the peasants for the labour. Like, otherwise they won't do it. So wealth has always circulated. Like, this isn't some sort of new innovation that the left have come up with. The left's innovation is to make it so that we all have the same wealth. They want us to all ultimately be the same. And that's actually a really evil prospect, if you think about it, because that means that someone who does no work at all is entitled to exactly what I have.
So that is definitely ethics checks, right? That is definitely ethics focused. That whole conversation right there is focused on the ethics of the situation. So that is a good indicator for the FE. He seems, again, to continuously narrow it down into a box, but there's a bunch of them, right? There's not a whole lot of ideas. It's not we haven't really gotten a whole lot of examples here. This has been all about the idea and all about the one idea. So it feels like a good fit. It's really hard to confirm feelings. It's really hard to confirm ethics, but that's a really good indicator of that, right? That's what he is. That's what the problem was. He was wrong about what everybody thought. He thought that the left wing was about freedom and justice and equality and all of these good things. And so he was wrong about that. That's what he intentionally chose wrong. And it wasn't until he started logic checking it that he figured out that it wasn't. He's very much concerned with the ethics. You could, like, if he was an I, this would be swapped around, right? If he was more focused on me, it would be NI at the top and FE on the bottom. And that would be understanding the best path and feeling responsible for the ethics. That's a real fine line between those two. It's a little bit different in focus. He seems to be about being responsible for the idea, and the ethics are just there. He's seeing the ethics, and that's what's causing him to act. So it feels like a good confirmation for the ENFJ. We're going to give it a couple more minutes.
Exactly what you have, which is not fair.
See, I like Hanlon's razor, and maybe to the point of being naive, but I'm just sticking to it. The idea that it's not necessarily out of evil, but maybe stupidity. I mean, you said yourself you were quite left wing.
It's not even evil. It is evil, but it's not that the people are evil. It's that they think this sounds like a nice ideal.
Yes.
It's not a nice ideal. actually. It's actually the end of what they claim to be to most value, which is diversity. Diversity comes from inequality, because equality means sameness. And if we're all the same, then there is no diversity. And this is...
That's a logic sequence, right? And he hasn't worked out. If he got pushback on it, he would probably be a little defensive over it. I don't know that he's going to get the pushback. First off, it's sound logic. But second off, I just don't feel like that this interview is going to give him the logic pushback that we would need for a confirmation on that.
This is the problem with liberalism. It is a great homogenizing force that seeks to turn everything into the same thing. And they don't know when to stop.
What do we do then with the idea that there's 8 billion people on the planet, there's a whole bunch in the UK, some were born like in a bin, and I went to private school and had a nice life.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want equity, because that's just ridiculous. But what do we do? Do we just go, well, that's your lot?
Well, I think that the most important thing for people is to feel that they're being treated fairly.
Ethics.
Right. That's because
And the box.
as soon as we get off of ideological...
Fair, just, justice. Like most of his focus has been on that particular box. Now, it's a slightly different box, but they all fit inside that one box, right? Justice and truth are not necessarily the same thing, but they kind of are, right? It's not holding open a whole bunch of ideas. It's holding open the same idea. It's very much concerned on the ethics as opposed to the morality.
language like equity, equality, liberty, all this sort of stuff, and say, okay, but on the basis of how we feel about these things, am I being treated fairly? And so there was an example, I think it was in Cheshire, of a young chap who had looked his entire life to join the police force, and so he'd got the right qualifications, he'd done the right training, and they denied him on the fact that he was a white man, and he sued them successfully over that.
Brilliant.
Right? And this is obviously unfair. It's not fair that because he is a white man, it's not fair that because you're a white man that you shouldn't get to promote and present your own documentaries. That's just not fair. Like that's not right. And we don't need a massive ideological apparatus to come to that conclusion. Any person can come to that conclusion as their own personal judgment.
Well,
And that's where we're going to wrap this one up, because I think that we've got a pretty good estimation, right? This seems to fit fairly well. It is not, again, not to say that this is a medical diagnosis or that I know the intricate minds of Carl Benjamin. I have not spent the time to sit down with that, right? You can learn someone that well. You can learn yourself that well, and that is the point of doing this. We're looking for indicators in other people of how we might do it, how we might think about it, how we might express these things, so that we can identify within ourselves things that we want to change within ourselves. Carl has spent a lot of time getting healthy in his stack, even if he hasn't called it that. He has spent a lot of time making sure that he's got what other people think and making sure that the organization is in place and that he is seeing the actual ideas. That is why he changed from left to right. I highly recommend that you check out the link down below and you go back and check out the rest of this podcast. It is always good to get the full context of the conversation. It is always good to do your independent checks of what I am saying. See if you agree with me. If you do, let me know. If you don't, let me know. We're here to help. We are here to help you find what you need to find out about yourself so that you can change about you the things that you want to change. I am always good with a great discussion. This was a great discussion. I will be watching the rest of it, and I definitely recommend that y'all do too. Thank you both for the conversation. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I know that I do things a little bit differently. If you came here for a regular MBTI video, you're probably wondering, what the hell am I even doing? It is not random. I have not just pulled it out of my yang. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I do feel like this is a good fit. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.